In this video, I'm showing you the basics of how to play Graveyard. So let's get right into it. What's going on, guys? It's your boy Mars back with another Clash Royale video. And as I said, in today's video, I'm going through 5 major tips on how to use Graveyard and how to get better with Graveyard decks. So let's get right into it. Alright guys, so the first major tip on how to play Graveyard, and this is definitely the most important one, is to try your hardest to never lose a tower. Now, obviously, this can pretty much apply to any Clash Royale deck. If you never lost any towers, you would win every game pretty much. But this is especially important with Graveyard because if you lose one of your towers, then in order to win, you have to take 2 of your opponent's towers, and with Graveyard decks, that's just not really possible. If you think about it, it's pretty much impossible for you to get damage with the Graveyard once your opponent has King Tower activated. So if you took one of your opponent's towers, but you also lost one of your towers, and you're trying to go for their second tower, you're pretty much never going to be able to get it. Meanwhile, if they have any other card like a hog, balloon, or really just anything else, they'll probably be able to take your second tower before you take theirs. So it's so important with Graveyard to try to never lose one of your towers. As you can see over here in the deck that I'm playing, I have Bomb Tower and Tornado and Ice Wizard. So with that combination of cards, it's very easy to keep things away from your tower and really take as little damage as possible and just play lockdown defense for the entire game. Alright guys, the second major tip on how to use Graveyard is to look to activate King Tower whenever possible. In this deck, you have the Tornado, so you should be able to activate King Tower pretty easily against any Hog Rider, Balloon, Firecracker, Miner, and many other cards. There's so many ways to activate King Tower, and I'll be showing you an example or two here as I'm talking about it. But basically, Hog Rider should pretty much be an automatic win because you can activate King Tower with the Tornado and you have the Bomb Tower to pull it. In this scenario right here, I already had King Tower activated, but my opponent caught me without Bomb Tower in cycle. And since my tower was at only about 1000 HP, I had to pull his Hog Rider to my King Tower. Otherwise, I probably would have ended up losing this game. Alright guys, the third major tip for how to use Graveyard is to only go in for smart Graveyards. There's a couple different criteria that I would think of when I think of a smart Graveyard. First of all, if your opponent uses their poison, then feel free to go in for the Graveyard. If they don't have a poison in their deck, then you definitely got lucky and it's going to be a pretty easy matchup for you with Graveyard. But poison is such a popular card in the meta, and you should expect that your opponent is going to have poison, so you want to be saving your offensive Graveyards for when you know your opponent just used their poison. Other smart times to go in for a Graveyard is pretty much any time in double or triple elixir. Going in for like Knight Graveyard or Baby Dragon Graveyard in single elixir is very risky because if your opponent counters it with only a few elixir, then their counter push is going to be impossible for you to stop. Also, if you know your opponent overcommits with a lot of elixir, then you can go in for a Graveyard in single elixir. There's a situation over here where my opponent spent like 4 elixir and then dropped a Magic Archer to get some extra damage on my tower. So I knew I was definitely up elixir and I had a Baby Dragon surviving, so I went in for the Graveyard and ended up taking the tower and took the win. Alright guys, the fourth major tip to use Graveyard is to maximize your poison value. When you're gonna poison your opponent's tower and something else, always try to make it at least be 2 cards, or make sure you're fully killing whatever you're using the poison on. If your opponent drops just a Musketeer in the back at the beginning of the game, it's probably a bad idea to poison that because unless you make the Musketeer stay in the poison longer, it won't fully die. And then they can go in for things in front of it and you won't have your poison anymore to get multiple cards. I'll be showing a couple examples over here as I talk about it, but when you're poisoning, you should always be trying to get like an Ice Wizard, an Electro Wizard, a Musketeer, or a building and your opponent's tower. And whenever possible, never settle for average poison value. Try to get like 2 things and your opponent's tower. It's usually pretty easy to get great poison value when you're running Graveyard because if you go in for a Graveyard, your opponent has to respond with other things right next to their tower to counter it. So hopefully you should be able to poison at least 1 or 2 cards and hit your opponent's tower for a lot of damage. Poison is one of the best cards in the game, especially when you're getting maximum value out of it, so never settle for average poison value. Always try to get as much value out of your poison as you can. Alright guys, the fifth and final tip when you're running Graveyard is try your hardest to never lose to Hogs, ram riders, battle rams, or balloons. There's also a few other win conditions that are really easy to pull when you're running graveyard, but the simple fact that you have bomb tower and tornado means you should pretty much never lose to a hog rider. Now obviously if you're playing like the best hog player in the world, they're probably gonna find a way to beat you, but you can always tornado things away from your tower and use the bomb tower to pull stuff, or even use the bomb tower first to pull it and then tornado it from the bomb tower to your king tower. There's just so many possibilities on defense when you have the ice wizard, tornado, and bomb tower that against certain win conditions like hog, balloon, and ram rider, you should try your hardest to pretty much consider that an auto win and never let them get damaged. Some other graveyard decks also use maybe a Tesla or a goblin cage, and these are definitely good options too, especially the goblin cage is very good in graveyard decks because it gives you defense and counter push. But anyways guys, those are my 5 main tips on how to use graveyard, and if you stick to all those, you'll be winning way more games with graveyard. If you guys made it this far in the video, make sure to click that like button and that subscribe button right now. Doing those little things takes like 1 or 2 seconds, but it benefits my channel tremendously, and I really appreciate it. Also, if you do want to show extra support for the channel, head over to patreon.com/MarsUltimateGaming. I'll be linking that in the description. But anyways, guys, that's basically going to wrap it up for today's Graveyard video. I hope these tips help you out and help you win way more games with Graveyard. And if you made it this far, thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you guys in a couple days with another Clash Royale video.